Welcome back. You're watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime, and we are continuing with the conversations here, looking right now at the tax law that is being challenged by Okio Mutata and the rest of the petitioners there. But before we head there, there is a very interesting article as well in the People Daily today, and it just makes me to incline to wonder why, or either these governors and the cabinet secretaries really love their wives. We've seen what is really, they really love their wives.
They love their wives.
They really, yes. Okay. Because now there's a mixed reaction over Kakamega's spousal bill. And it says spouses of future Kakamega governors will require an official appointment if a bill seeking to anchor the office of the governor's spouse-in-law is enacted by the county assembly. The bill generated by the county executive drew mixed reaction when it was subjected to public audit yesterday, with some members of the public faulting the provisions on the appointment on grounds that it could be exploited by dishonest county bosses to hire relatives and friends. One of the key highlights of the proposed law, that is a departure from the norm, states that being a first wife or legally wedded governor's wife or husband does not automatically guarantee one of the office and its privileges. The bill outlines the functions of the office and qualifications of the occupier who will be appointed by the governor. Among other attributes, the person must be knowledgeable and caring and can be fired by the appointing authority in a similar fashion without reference to anyone. Surely.
Is
the MCS.
The 1st of April passed, eh?
But you know,
the 1st of April has passed.
So it really raises serious questions regarding, the principal cabinet secretary and the office of should I call her the first prime cabinet secretary, quote unquote, first lady, the deputy president's office as well. This is nowhere stipulated in our constitutions. And we should be raising questions on why these monies are being divested to these particular offices in the first place. Where did they get approval? Not in Parliament. Why did they come up with this particular and this latest development as well?
I was going to make a quick one before I let Patrick run with this one. That in Kenya we have now got a huge fascination for being in government. You would almost think, when you listen to the kinds of things we discuss here and so on, that the only employer and the most desirable employer is government. You know, in the 70s it was not like that, with the private sector that people wanted to go to, but now it's government. And then presumably, like the Kakamega law, you now want to come into government with your entire family. It will be your wife and children, and the challenges there. But having said that, I'd rather have Patrick and Bilo say something to this.
I know you're precarious,
but you know why? This will be a benefit if Mujesi Sakwa comes as the next governor.
Next governor, he comes the next governor. We can always quote that you said it here.
So he's really cagey.
I think what you're seeing here is this whole thing around what we were talking about earlier, the cost of government and the cost of running this country. Yeah. The excesses that people saw before, they want to make it the norm, so that it now becomes attractive to go into government than it is to go into a private sector job, which was the opposite, as Manyasi said before. Yeah? People wouldn't go to the government because there was low pay, there was low this, there was low that, there was low whatever it is. And if you go to a lot of countries, being in government in the UK is a voluntary job. Yeah, you are, if you're if you're an MP or whatever it is, it's almost a voluntary job. You just get paid your expenses for going up and down at the minimum level in public transport. That's what you get paid for. So it's a train ticket. Yeah, but here, getting into that place is the exact opposite. Right? If I was in a similar situation as an MCA, I would not get that kind of money. So here, what is happening here is that people are beginning to say, okay, let's put this now for the governor. Ikipita governor, itakuja kwa deputy governor, and eventually even us will get it.
Of course, they all need. I remember
it is all around. Let us start with somebody who is not us, so that he's not seen as a as us wanting our own parks. And eventually they'll say, but the so-and-so is getting them, we're the same.
But Patrick, if you may remember, they were on it actually. The MCAs were seeking allowances for their girlfriends, even for their girlfriends.
Yeah.
Remember when they were benchmarking and going abroad to just benchmark on how to use the iPads?
Let me say, this madness only happens in Kenya. I don't know where they are getting these things from. Because the countries that we normally imitate, like the US or Europe, do not have this craze. In the US, the First Lady does not have an office. She doesn't have an official role. She doesn't have a salary. In Europe, you remember when Macron tried to appoint his wife?
Yeah.
There was chaos.
Yeah.
He wanted just to give her a role. And, so that some security and some travel expenses and something, and there was chaos. He said no. So here we have a situation where now offices have been created complete with budget. This year's budget is the first one that we have seen. An office of the First Lady or the Deputy First Lady being given hundreds of millions from the exchequer. And now, as the Wazungus say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If the big guys have done, the guys down there will want to replicate it. Yeah. And you can't stop it. They have always replicated everything that happens in national level. So the law is the same. In fact, the constitution, the county is a replica of the national government in its roles and functions and the way it operates. So I think we must lead by example. I think when you elect, the resources are not infinite. We have to appreciate that Kenyans have challenges. You cannot give everyone within a leadership responsibility that comes, and therefore start giving money outside the constitution. So we have a challenge where you take an oath, you will abide by the constitution, and then the following day you are not.
You're not.
When it suits you, you do. When it doesn't suit you, you don't. It's like this story we are seeing on Standard, the headline of strangers in the cabinet.
Yeah.
So I think there seems to be, impunity to a level that we have not seen before in this country when it comes to, compliance with the provisions of the constitutions. And I think some of the institutions that should have held this executive accountable are not, particularly Parliament.
Yeah.
You cannot approve budget for an office that is not being provided for here.
In the constitution.
People went to court to challenge the office of CAS. But another office which is equally not
stands unchallenged.
You are not challenging it, and you are allocating budget to it. So some things don't make sense, and I think it's unfortunate. With the way we are going, I agree. When soon the whole family will be. I remember the time when Benazir Bhutto was the Prime Minister of Pakistan.
Yes.
Then she went into, I think, maternity. And then her husband would be the one running. Meanwhile, when the husband was arrested or something, it is the mother who will hold for it. You can't run.
But I fail to understand. If you go back to, was it Meru County? Yeah, where we had
this the guy,
the governor,
the guitar,
and the guitarist husband there. It really brought a lot of kafafo, a lot of noise from that place. But now this is the same direction. Actually, it is headed. Maybe Harsh should have considered also coming up with a spousal bill.
So we've gone far. There is now First Ladies Association for the governors, First Ladies Association. People are trying to form also
the body is interesting.
similar things for their wives.
And we see at this the other week I was here, and I will repeat it. Unlike the brain, the stomach rats you when it's empty. unlike the brain, the stomach.
Unlike
when it's empty.
Yes. And Peter Obi said very clear. In fact, summarize. He said, no country can progress if its politics is more profitable than its industry productivity. We can't. And that's why we seek this kind of things. That's why MCAs, they want this. And he says, in a country where those in government are richer than entrepreneurs, you're headed for disaster. Because entrepreneurs, and go to the thing Biro was raising, a manufacturer is a producer. If I just sit here, what does actually an MCA produce? Bales, fine. But who is really down there in terms of production? And I thought that was bottom-up was all about. We go back to the bottom and enhance productivity. The narrative that you get from the rich take to the poor, that will never work. I cannot take the money or the resources that Patrick has and we go to the poor. Rather, how do we enhance the productivity at that level? So this narrative, we want this, it's good. They can take those responsibilities. And it's important, I think it's important. If you look at the Beyond Zero, it was a very good initiative. What the First Lady is doing about lecture, it's good. But it can be done outside where you are requiring resources from the exchequer to go and enhance productivity. Because I think they have a responsibility too. But let's not get the support we're talking about from other priorities which are more important.
But I'd like to weigh in on what Bello said. I mean, the Constitution, this document we have here, and if we go back to how this thing was arrived at, it wasn't actually a new constitution. It was an amalgamation of different discussions that had taken place about what is the best way for Kenya to go forward.
Over 20 years.
Right? Over 20 years. So they said, no, don't throw this away, don't throw that away, don't throw that away. Combine them. So that constitution team that was put up had their hands tied. And they had to combine all these things. And if you remember that, there was a lot of mistrust in the country. Right? There was a lot of poverty in the country. There was a lot of things that were happening in the country. Right? And a lot of the previous attempts at making a constitution are trying to address those issues in their own way. So when the constitution came out, it wasn't actually a fit-for-purpose constitution. It was a ragtag of different eras that were put together to make up the current constitution. And I believe that, at least from my point of view in the private sector, we said this constitution will need to be relooked at. At that time, it was a firefighting issue, the Kriegler report, needing whatever it is and all that, because the country was burning and we needed something to stabilize the country. So this constitution came up and did that. But what it also did, it created a lot of restrictions on how things can work. It put in things that were supposed to also engage the public, things like public participation, without saying how it was going to happen, right? So a lot of things now, which are saying if the public says it is okay, the country can go ahead. But the public participation, like if this spousal bill goes through, is whatever it is, the public participation will be purely a window dressing, which is what happens even now.
Yes.
Right? Where the public participation was a thing that was supposed to stop these excesses. But it is not stopping any of the excesses we're seeing.
And how was public participation being done yesterday on a holiday?
Where?
Yeah, in Kakamega.
Yeah.
That's the question again.
That's the point. The public participation doesn't happen even on the budget. Yeah.
No.
When you talk about the public participation, what came out of public participation is not what came out as a finance bill. Yeah.
Yeah, they may have overlooked it, Patrick, but certainly there are informed views that are brought in.
They were all brought in, but they were overlooked completely.
It could be, yes.
So what is the point of saying that we have public participation that is going to hold these things in check? So when you look at that whole system that is not working, these kind of mischievous things that are being brought will go through. And we are going to set this country on a serious downward slope when these kind of things come through. Right? And the fact that people have the audacity to put it in means they think it's going to go through. Because of the processes that we have of managing these kind of things being brought to people. So I think for me, I want to go back just to the fact that we Kenyans, because of the way this thing has been done and the way we're interpreting the constitution and getting things, allowing things to go through, we are just destroying this country.
Indeed. Yeah. Bilo, because I wanted to raise also the issue, just with this particular bill, we had also the governor's bill. And that governor's bill was being steamrolled by, I saw on the face of Wagamati really speaking volubly around it. And from that particular bill, they were saying the governors, they should be paid packs as the president is being, the benefits and the retirement benefits of the president, their packs should be akin to that of a president. And even if you're a one-term governor, of course, you are entitled also to, a lifetime pension. And this was raising questions regarding also how they're seeing, because from their assessment is, they are chiefdoms of the kingdom, so to speak. They should be treated like a president, even with the benefits of the outriders as well. I don't know what happened to that particular bill, but it just goes to show what really happens within, and some of these bills that are being raised.
It'll get crazy.
Yeah. So are they really overplaying their hands with?
Yes, and I think it started in 2013 when the devolution was first implemented. And since it was a new thing, the terrain was completely new. I remember in Naivasha, they got Kibaki to accept a lot of things, to use the flag, to use the titles, His Excellency, to have all those things, I mean, that immediately put them up. And so when I remember, as chair of finance committee in the Senate, we had the first session with the governors regarding their accountability for the misappropriation of funds in their counties. I remember their chair told our committee that, look, are you going to call the president? Is the National Assembly going to call the president for the finance committee to answer questions for their ministries? If they are not going to, then it's wrong for us also to be called. The matter had to go to court, and the court had told them, you are the ones who are accountable, because the good thing is, apart from the constitution, the county government act was clear that the buck stops with the governor in the management of the affairs of the county. So we told them, my friends, this is not National Assembly. This is what the constitution says. The buck stops with you. You'll be answerable for everything. You remember they had refused someone, so they were told by the court, my friends, you have to appear before the Senate and you have to answer questions. So there is that thinking that being a governor, this is a system parallel to what happens at the national level, or similar to what happens at the national level, so we must enjoy, but it is not. I mean, the act which gives effect to the provisions of this law, this constitution, sets out different responsibilities for governors and different roles, accountability, audit, fault. So I think you cannot therefore wake up and say our pension, our retirement benefits, our packs must be similar. The president, let me tell you, the issue of the president was different. You're looking at the nation. We were looking at the unity of the country at the time when we set up these things. We wanted a president to retire peacefully. After the multi-party in 1992, this thing was new. Will the president hand over after 2 years? Was a question. What if he says, I'm not going anywhere? So they had to find a way of enticing the president to hand over power peacefully and exit. So these terms that has been given, which are very generous compared to many countries in Africa, was actually intended to facilitate that peaceful transition when we started that multi-party thing in 1992, and so the first presidency, 2002, and it happened. So we said, okay, this is a good thing for us. Let the president hand over quietly and nicely and go without any, because you remember last year what happened, you saw, when there were concerns whether Uhuru would hand over. He failed to congratulate the incoming president, and there was a lot of anxiety in the country. What will happen? What if he says, I'm not handing over to so these were the things that we were looking at for the national for presidency. But governors, no, it's a different ballgame. You are elected to run, you have 2 terms, you hand over and you go. You cannot, everybody. What will happen if the MP says, look, I'm also running a constituency, I should also be treated in the same way, same packs. This is why today there's a case that has been in courts and in parliament for the last 30-40 years. Councillors saying, those councillors who retired 30-40 years ago saying, no, you want to be given the same terms and the same benefits or packs that the other ones who retired just the other day are getting.
And I think also the National Assembly has the same bill as well.
Is also asking for the same thing. So these things, you have to, as a country, some things.
Even if you're a one-term MP, so you get the rest of your life pension.
So the challenge we have is where decisions are based on political expediency. If the executive was not beholden to the political expediency, some of these things would not even be there. But because as a president or an executive, you're looking at the future, elections and so forth, sometimes you close your eyes to some of these things. So you allow governors to entertain these thoughts. You allow parliamentarians to entertain these thoughts. You allow the councillors to. So this is a challenge we have. And you know, the consequences would be, you know, what we are struggling with now, the taxes. Because you have to pay.
At the end of the day, yeah, we pay
Of
for
course.
this spouses as
Of
well.
course, money doesn't grow on trees.
But I think
So the expenditure-
it also reflects the reality at the bottom in terms of the fact that the desperation and people don't have money.
They don't.
Right? So when you look at these people who have come into those positions, right, a lot of them really have not been comfortable, or the way they've been making money has not been the right way. So they have to now make this into a full-time job that pays just like any other job in the country. And the reality is that a lot of these things you're going to see are going to start increasing the burden that the government has because of this kind of, these kind of things that people are putting in. All they're doing is looking for money and looking for
Deals.
Indeed.
for deals.
That's why the reason also we have the governors not, because I can see SRC is putting county bosses on spot to over allowances, the 250,000 that they get every month for the house allowance, and yet they're supposed to be putting up structures for themselves. So some of them are living in hotels. We remember some of them are actually living in hotels. For
Even where there are
as well.
houses,
And
many of them are
there's
not living in
They're not
it.
living in it. Yeah.
They prefer collecting their money.
They prefer collecting the money.
Of course.
And that's why we need to measure the whole country.
So this offices they're creating is just a conduit to
Right.
have the cash flow flowing there, so that they can use them at the end of the day. You were saying
Because
so.
I think there's a fundamental question we need to step back. How do we create that money? I think nobody cares about that. So if for you to get, because it's finite, it's not infinite. It reach somewhere, hakuna. So how do we step back and create more money? And that should be the focus of this country. It's not how I'm going to create an extra office and get that, but how do we create more so at the end of the day, we have a bigger cake.
My friend, you are going to be the wrong person for the president of the Republic of Kenya.
Oh, me?
Yes.
I'll rather my
Because the moment you start talking of looking for more money, you will put us where we are now, more taxes. what we want is a president who will say, stop. There's no money.
No money.
So please live with what you have. Period. That will bring senses back to us. But the moment you say, let us collect more money, I will demand more expenditure.
So these loopholes in the constitutions, or maybe, as you said, they're not really following the constitution. I wanted to just juxtapose it with the strangers in cabinet that we're discussing. The faces that we have seen.
And the money bill thing.
Yeah, the money bill will come.
You are being theoretical. Who cares about the constitution?
No, we should care. As
we the people.
we,
We
the-
should.
we
We the
citizens, we do care.
We should.
I do
line
care.
one.
That's
We
why
the
we are raising
people,
this
yes.
stage
Any
here.
document.
Yeah, that's why this constitution
I
is here.
think a lot of
Look at the
people
way
care.
it started.
Any
Yeah?
document,
We the people.
any document is worth its salt.
We the people.
Any document is worth its salt by implementation.
Yeah.
Look at the what do you call these guys who are cabinet minister? What do you call them?
CSS. Which cabinet ministers?
The other
Cabinet secretaries.
Sister
CAS.
cabinet. CAS. Yes, that's what I'm looking.
Yes.
Look at the CAS. The law was very clear. There's no position of that. There are some who are working. My understanding is any document, it's worth its salt if it's implemented to the letter. And the question which I get into, I ask, now look at the finance bill. We all did that, we did that, we discovered it. But the things went as they were. So it's a question where perhaps, in my understanding, and this has happened, we have good document, but the implementation, nothing happens in them. The point I was trying to make, Bill, earlier on, and as you said, the only way we can make more money is by producing more.
Yeah.
For us to produce more, we must direct our resources to those productive areas, not really by the conspicuous, as you're saying with Patrick earlier on. It's not the conspicuous consumption we have. And that's what we have right now. And there was a very interesting, I think, socio by Miguna, the one who say, I'm not boarding, once upon a time. And he's saying Kibaki was useless. I don't know if I've seen it. Kibaki did basically. But whether you like it or not, pesa ilikuwa mfukoni. That was the bottom line. Business grew. Whether you say he did all that, and that's what we are looking for. Is there a pesa mfukoni? Therefore, I can do investment. I can create wealth. and
Thank
grow
you.
the economy.
Right, thank you. So I wanted just to look at the Constitution, then we, of course, look also
Yeah.
at the issue of the
Well,
challenge
let
of
me
the
brief in the
finance.
Constitution. Don't
Yeah.
take me wrong. But the
Yeah.
implementation of it,
Yeah.
and I remember one time, I think when Bill, you say that, maybe I saw in the university, Idu Mugai was the AG. And you say, we need a bedera, we need what? He said, take it. Because they're adamant. And they're not budging at all. I remember again when I said, hey, my friend, what is it? These guys are not listening. So if you want to have a flag, have it. If you want to have your excellence, have it.
So Article 152 of the Constitution, the cabinets consist of the President, the Deputy President, the Attorney General, and not fewer than 14 and not more than 22 cabinet secretaries. The President shall nominate, and with approval of the National Assembly, appoint cabinet secretaries. Let's leave it at that. So where does the President really get the authority
To have these
to
others.
actually have these faces in the cabinet?
These
I
are
think-
not cabinet secretaries, are they? They are just being allowed.
That's what we're asking.
They are cabinet level appointees, which happens, but they're not members of the cabinet.
But they are telling
Can't be.
No, but the
Well,
Constitution
I-
is very
I
clear.
think
It's not a
They may
cabinet
have been
level
on the
or
second
akin
row
to.
at the back.
I think it depends on, in any meeting, normally you would allow some experts to be in attendance.
Advisors.
Experts, if you had a board meeting, if he was having his board meeting of one of his blue chip companies in the Nairobi Stock Exchange, he would, in the board of directors meeting, have in attendance technical people from finance, from personnel, from marketing, or whatever. They do that happens in any meeting. They are experts, whether it's in the military or executive or boards or this happens. So it's about what exactly this swearing in was about. If you're putting these people at the level of a cabinet secretary in terms of their roles, then it's wrong, because you're expanding the cabinet by circumventing the law. You are not announcing the person is a CS, but in essence, you're swearing them in as a CS. They sit there in their respective capacity as,
But Bill,
if the person is simply appearing once in a while in a meeting to shed light on a particular subject, that in attendance, to provide some technical expertise or whatever is allowed. But
Bill,
so we want to know what exactly this swearing in. I have not understood what exactly.
How did they do it with the Tuju in the last government?
They did with Tuju, Mbadi. There are a lot of people, but
Tuju,
that's why there is a case.
But
People
they did
went to
not
court.
succeed, but Tuju.
That's why
Tuju
people
did.
went to court, and the court ruled that it is illegal and unconstitutional.
But Biro, you had opportunity to be in the cabinet. Me, I would never perhaps be near it. Being a senator, you could have been there. But my understanding, if I'm going to a cabinet meeting are not places for discussions. You're actually asking the cabinet. I've discussed with my technocrats. They advise you. You go through that. At times you have to come with a session of paper or a paper. They have given you that. So you're asking the cabinet for approval or no approval. It goes through a process. So what discussions should we be having in a cabinet meeting?
Why would you seek the expert's opinion in the
cabinet meeting? You
Because
have
we believe
actually
all these other
opportunities.
CSs, they also have technocrats who advises them. So is this a duplication of functions? I wonder also, going with also reasons.
No, you see, one thing which I've seen, which is wrong, and it started with the last administration. There is a trend where the decisions in public service that would ideally have been made by line ministries have been moved to the State House. This has happened in this country the last 10 years, and this government just followed what the other one did. So you set up entire teams there of experts. For example, the Economic Council. There are people in Treasury, experts who are mandated to provide that work.
Yeah.
Now you've created
Economic
another
secretaries,
office,
yes.
whether it's communications, finance, security. You have created. So, in fact, meetings are being held nowadays in the State House, no longer in the ministries. People are going there. Private sector are being called to come and do their presentations in the State House. And so what happened? The risk with this, let me tell you,
This is like the one for housing. Come and
the risk with this kind of style of management is that anything that goes wrong or failure to achieve certain results, the buck will stop with the president. because he has taken everything right to his office. And I remember we are advising the former president on this matter. No, let decisions be made by ministries. If you want to communicate, use the Harambee House, or use what ministries that, they have got prime minister, you have a coordination, whatever. But to bring all decision making up there. So this year's treasury is supposed to be your advisor. This year's security is supposed to be your advisor. You have other people who are advising you. So there's duplication of roles. So that one is there. But I think for me, I think, cabinet does not mean merely a place where you go and get decisions by the ministries, rubber stamp by the president. No. I think in cabinet there's supposed to be some dynamism for discussion on issues. What you bring as your ministry may not be accepted in the cabinet. Wait a minute. And because of that, you may, as a minister, be required to convince your colleagues on a matter. And you might need to bring your expert. You might need to bring someone to try and... So I think once you have allowed experts in the State House to be appointed to advise the president, clearly what it means is that he will have them in cabinet to guide him when cabinet ministers bring proposals in the cabinet. He would want his team to be there so that they can say, no, this is not a good idea.
I know the process.
I love a very... Actually, what I said earlier on, and let me just go back to that. Yeah. In terms of just the structure of an organization, which is Kenya Inc. When you have Kenya Inc., and I go back to the same thing, leaders and managers. Yeah. If you're a good leader, you will make sure that you have competent managers who run the business for you. And using that analogy with this, the cabinet is the management of the country. Those are your departmental managers, as they are. If all these guys are doing their job efficiently, they've been facilitated, they've got experts running it and so forth and so on, then as a leadership team, their role changes completely. They're looking at Vision 2030. They're looking at the future, they're looking at what is going to hit this country, and they're discussing those kind of things. And if there are major decisions to be made, they will have had all that information digested, whatever it is, shared, and they will all know what decision they're going to make at that level. So the leader should be relying on the managers whom the leader has selected to be the competent people to advise the leader. That is how a corporate organization operates. So now, when you bring in all these extra people in, it means that as a leader, you don't trust your managers at the end of the day. That's what it looks like. That's the optics that come out. That as a leader, you don't trust your managers. Therefore, you need somebody to make sure that your managers are not double-crossing you, or they're not doing whatever it is. So in a way, it's a dynamic of a successful company.
Right.
A successful company has trust. A successful company has people who are competent. The leader's job is to lead. The manager's job is to manage. And the managers are competent and they are doing it very well. So this duplication of roles that you're seeing, I mean, this whole thing, I see it differently. It's not about the constitution, what have you, and everything else. The constitution has its whatever.
Yes.
But this is all around looking at Kenya as Kenya Inc. As a company.
But what is so critical, because we have also the cabinet secretaries who are supposed to be apolitical. I think that was what the constitution was espousing, that we have a political cabinet secretaries who are meant to be technocrats. So they are actually the fine expertise that they bring on the table will help the president make strategic decisions at the end of the day. As you say, issue of trust. So why again do we have new faces? And looking also the voice of your former party colleague Cleophas Malala as well. It's purely political.
Yeah.
So,
but you see, there's a process what we call cabinet paper. If I'm actually a manager I develop a cabinet paper. How do I develop it? I use a technocrat I have. And by the way, what he's saying is right. The economic planning department develop a medium-term plan. 4 is thrown out of the window. So it's being done somewhere else. So when you develop that cabinet paper, you actually cannot take a document somewhere. If it's going to backfire on you, it's a negative on you. So what do? You share with some colleagues in cabinet. Even before you take them. Patrick, what do you think of this? If we take it there, would it pass? So you do your homeworks. And even as a chair of a board, if I'm going to bring a motion there and I know to be defeated, I will not. I will withdraw it. But I'll ask my colleague, what do you think about this paper? It's a board. He says, Wanaina. And I saw that with Professor Bithi, not Philip, the one who became a preacher after he refused to go to Arusha when they were shuffling everybody with the boy. He will not bring something in Senate. If you are not called Professor...
Bithi before Magoha?
Yes,
okay.
If you are not called Professor Godfrey Muriuki, if you are called the guy who passed on, or Kothoke, Karega Mutai, he had 5 guys. They said, what do you think? Let's go through Senate. Then he will come and say, Professor Muriuki, what do you think? Or Kothoke, what do you think? If the 3 guys say yes, in a Peter. That's the same process I would imagine. If I was seated there doing it, if you call his colleague, what do you think about this cabinet paper? Such that I've done all the necessary. If I feel there are gaps, I'll step back. So when we take the president, as a reader, and there's something perhaps you need, I will ask you, Deba, you're in charge of internal security. What do you want? You have read, gentlemen and ladies, what do you think? US is, what do you want? Don't tell us the stories. What do you want? Now your team has advised you as a reader. The team now we have probably in State House have advised and say, this is good, you need to work here, you need to work here, you need to work here. And so the document is good, the cabinet paper is good, but go and look at ABCD. That's how I would do. I would probably minimize. I would understand at the AU, or you and you have your guys behind there, and they will advise you appropriately. So the question which Patrick summarizing in a way, I'm not sure I'm going to bring these fellas to advise me at that level. I don't know. I am not sure about the lady there. There's a lady who is a cabinet secretary. Maybe that one is helping. What's her name again?
Secretary to the cabinet.
Secretary to the cabinet.
You see, Dibal.
That's why probably I look at it.
Dibal.
She's an advisor.
She's advisor.
But the secretary to the cabinet is Miss
Is
I
this
forget
one
her
used to
name.
be the CA.
Secretary to the cabinet. Yes, yeah.
in the last administration, Kenya used to act as the secretary to the cabinet.
Rosemary.
Nowadays,
No,
Rosemary.
she's not Rosemary. I'll get the name.
I think the issue.
Jokavi.
She's from Kirinyaga.
Yeah, I'll remember. I can see your face. But the name is not downloaded.
Even in the photo, she's there.
Okay.
Come on, how can I forget my friend there?
But you know, gentlemen, I think I want to reiterate what I said, that this thing is about what exactly is the role of those people being sworn in. If they are going to have a role bigger than what they actually had, then it must come out in some executive order, setting out their responsibility, if it's at the level of a CS.
Mm-hmm.
If it is just people being asked to be in attendance to help the president and the deputy to crunch some of the numbers or understand some of the issues, I don't think that's a big deal. I think even in I don't know if US, but in Europe they do attend. Even in UK, even political advisors are sometimes asked to attend. Cabinet meetings. So so attendance is different from when you are appointing someone to sit in the cabinet.
And
so
the
that's what they need to come out clear and explain what exactly is this people being
And
sworn.
therein lies the loophole where the court forces cannot succeed. Because they can always redefine what these guys' roles are. I say, in fact, it wasn't what you
Okay,
thought.
the court,
It's what Bilo has said. And then the matter
The big
collapses.
advice from Bilo.
She's called
And
Mercy.
go and implement.
She's called Mercy.
Yes, Mercy. Mercy. Yes.
Shame on me, I
When
could
it comes to
forget that.
What's her last name? Mercy who?
Enjoy.
Wanjohi.
Right. Yeah, Mercy
that's
Wanjohi,
right.
right. So, Bilo, I want us to comment lastly, because I can see time is really flying away from us, on the Omutata now moving to court together with other petitioners that mentioned here, Eludu Matindi, Michael Kojo, Benson Otieno, to challenge the tax law as it is right now. Given that the issue of complementarity between the Senate and the National Assembly. The argument has been this is a money bill, so it's not really within the remit of the Senate to actually debate on money bill. Now, Mutata says there's a violation of the Constitution because it's supposed to be complementary. Both debates should be in both houses. And this is the case we've been raising. Is there a lacuna in the law? Since money has also touched the counties, it should have been debated also in the Senate.
No, I think the law is very clear. The Constitution, Article 114, is very clear about the definition of what a money bill is. I don't think that is in contention. The second thing is who should decide whether a bill is a money bill or not is also the Speaker of the National Assembly. These things are very clear. However, when a finance bill exceeds or have issues that are outside the specific definition in the Constitution, then there's a challenge. For example, here, substantial amounts of everything in the substantial amount of items in the finance bill is money. True. But finance bill has often been used as an omnibus bill to make a lot of amendments to other acts of Parliament. In this case, you have seen there are amendments to the finance. There is an issue on the housing levy, and we were told clearly by the executive that housing levy is about counties. You've seen the president and ministers insisting that this is about counties, governors, the ones who are going to benefit. So, in that sense, then it's affecting counties. It talks about the Employment Act, amendments to the KRA Act, amendments to unclaimed financial. So many things have been impacted on by the finance bill. In that regard, yes, then it should go to the Senate because there are many other things you have included. So I think they will have a point if they go to court on that basis. I think what needs to be done is the National Assembly and the Treasury should be very careful when they bring in a money bill. It should restrict it to money matters only. And in that case, then Senate would not want to get involved, and that happens in all the countries, whether it's in UK or whether it's in US. The House of Representatives, that deals with the issues to do with the budget and money. But in this case, I think they have a number of issues that they have included in the finance bill, which members of the Senate would argue impact on counties and should have been submitted. But probably, unless you look at it from materiality, 90% of the issues are about finance, really, and they're not touching on the counties. They're one or two items, but in essence, that's where the issue is. If there are issues, but I don't think the argument that because taxes affect people in counties, then it must go to the Senate. No, that I don't think would that would not sell. It doesn't. I mean, it's money bill. Anything to do with revenues or raising taxes or all those things, they're within the ambit of the National Assembly to deal with. I think the Constitution is very clear on that. But to the extent that they have so many other items that have been carried in that bill, then yes, counties could argue it must come to the Senate.
If it's an act, does the court also have an upper hand if they rule in favor, so to speak?
The court nullified over 100 laws that have been passed by National Assembly last year, you remember? They said they were illegal because they should have gone to the Senate. So majority of the laws that are passed in National Assembly should actually go to the Senate because they impact on counties. But the National Assembly represents the executive. The executive doesn't want hurdles of going to the Senate. And trying to convince. And Senate for a long time, at least the first and second, were a bit more independent than the National Assembly.
And the issue of the numerical strength.
And the voting is a bit, even in
current,
tedious because then you must vote as a delegation and you must get the 24%, the 24 out of the 47 county governors and county senators. So they don't want, the executive, do not want to get bogged down in the Senate.
And then there is also just the raw competition between the houses on issues of superiority. And so what was, you remember, I didn't participate in the constitution-making process in any way, but for those who did, I think there was an argument as to whether we are really copying the US model where Senate is an upper house. It's a sort of almost referral, you could say. Or we are talking about not even lateral, but subordinate institution to the National Assembly. And that was quite, it was frustrating when in the National Assembly to waste sometimes 2 hours of an afternoon session discussing on which house is the superior house and so on, and denying the other house access to the opportunity to discuss clearly matters that will impact counties finally. It takes a lot of time. But I think, whereas they might, let's say, the National Assembly is the only one that can originate money bills. But the implications of money bills goes way beyond, it doesn't go way beyond, touches on counties. And therefore, Senate needs to have a legitimate role in discussing it as well, even though it has to originate from the National Assembly. But those, sometimes it was moods. I remember I was new in Parliament and I did say, we are acting like co-wives, and I was told that this was in parliamentary language. Yes, I was warned by...
You're called to order by the Speaker.
The Speaker said that's on parliamentary language, but my frustration was we have valuable things to discuss. And here now we are just quibbling about things on which you should actually have an agreement on.
Indeed. I think there was a very interesting editorial cartoon on that by Victor Ndulu as well, that the National Assembly and the Senate is in the urinal, and all of them are trying to pee. Who's peeing higher than the other?
Like we used to do when we were young. How far?
How far the trajectory? As you're winding up.
Good thing it naturally comes down.
As you go up. You don't try now. You'll be on your knees.
Patrick, as we're winding up, just briefly on it as well, on this particular development.
I'm not a politician, I'm not a whatever it is and so forth. But when you have ambiguity in terms of the clear roles of different organs, right? It creates an opportunity for mischief, first of all, but also it creates an opportunity for disruption. And I think one of the first things that really we need to sort out is this tussle, right? There's very clear guidelines in the Constitution as to who should do what. There should then be guidelines and regulations that now say this is how we are going to operate based on what is in the Constitution. This will go here, this will go here, and if the threshold is so much as Bilo says, if it is beyond this, then it has to go to Senate. If it is not, it stays here, and so forth. And that is the responsibility of two people, the speakers of the two houses.
Yes.
They have to sit down and draft those rules.
And they're from the same party.
Right? They have to, right now, it's much easier.
Yeah.
Right? Sit down and draft those rules so that there's no ambiguity anywhere. Right? And if any arises out of any discussions, they should very quickly reconvene and just keep adding to it. That is how regulations work. When you talk about procedures in any organization, you start off with the basic set.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Right.
So,
Yeah, I think it's important to appreciate the Gitonga, the one who read the guys who looked at the Constitution. Their wisdom was very clear, having the two houses. I think it's important to have the National Assembly and the Senate. The gentleman,
who's Gitonga?
Zamba
Oh, okay,
Gitonga,
okay.
he was
Right.
the one in charge of this, and very, God bless his soul, very clear, and I think we need the two. However, my parting shot is this cartoon you've always been having
Yeah.
on it.
This finance bill.
It defines eachers. This cartoon is talking about sincerity. Look at the lady, he has the love for the country. She's dressed in the color skirt of our National Assembly. And he's looking, he doesn't even know. How safe is it? Sincerity, honesty, integrity.
How safe is it?
That's also good definers.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rabilo Okero, your parting shots? We not even discussed the issue. I think we can shelve it for next week of the pact of the president with the European Union that has really raised a lot of scruples around East Africa. And the question is, when we rebase the economy, we came a notch higher on another tier in the Eastern African continent.
I've never borrowed that argument.
So we are, as they say,
So
an
that
emerging
we
economy.
look richer.
we look richer.
We look richer.
That's why I'm borrowing.
We have bought a set of mitumbas that put us above other guys.
Yes. Yes.
I think we should broach the issue next week more robustly and
That's
why
good to look at, actually.
the East African community is raising scruples with it. And I think
course.
President Uhuru Kenyatta actually did that before. It seems we don't really learn from that experience with Donald Trump. Remember with that particular argument as well. So issue of consultation as you're talking, sincerity, this is what the East African community is taking a special umbrage with. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much. You wanted to give your closing remarks or we'll leave it at that?
I think one thing, when you read these papers, it's always depressing. You know, you read one revelation after another, one revelation. You know, like today, these power bills,
Yes.
the Auditor General is revealing that Kenyans have been robbed billions of shillings because those tenders for supply of heavy oil for these IPPs
Yes.
and whatever, there was so much fraud in it. People are being paid, so you get depressed. You are reading this after the next one, same story every day, and yet there's no one being dealt with. You don't see somebody being shown the door, somebody being fired. At least, even in developed countries, prosecution is not the issue. Just fire, so that people would know that there's zero tolerance of corruption. But the moment you allow these things to
before
happen,
they're fired, they step aside.
they step aside.
Yeah.
To
To
avoid
allow
being
these
fired.
things to go on, and then you're asking Kenyans, please pay the shilling. Mama mboga,
Or rather die.
shilingi ishirini. Yeah, this
Okay.
is terrible.
So, Mwenyezi Sako, thank you.
My take now is that we should allow the Constitution to work. I think we are in a phase in which there are many voices, and I think that's how it should be. Plus, there is the always reference to the courts, sort of arbitrate, but more important than that is the public discourse that precedes it. Managers of the economy at all levels should speak out what their intentions are, so there is an input from the public. If we do that, in my view, we are moving in the right direction.
Thank you. I wonder if Bilo had read the Gazette notice, the migration of Mwenyezi Sako.
I saw it.
To the new.
Indeed. Congratulations. When are we having the mbuzi?
Yeah, Mbuzi today.
No, first you
We end up on that note.
So Mbuzi.
We start with his.
But I really appreciate it. You've been watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime. Don't go away. News Diary is up next. Mbuzi.